Greetings to everyone. Here is my weekly spiritual supplement. We know by faith what we give to God, He multiplies it. In the Gospel last week, we heard Matthew's account of the feeding of the 5,000. The feeding of the multitudes was clearly important to the Gospel writers since, aside from the resurrection, it is the only miracle recorded by all four evangelists. However, it is important to note that both Matthew and Mark record two different feedings of the multitude. The first feeding is of 5,000 people, and the subsequent one is of 4,000. So why did Matthew and Mark include two miracles of the same kind? After all, if Jesus has already fed 5,000 people, what is really added to the gospel story by including a second feeding of a smaller number? The feeding of the 4,000 is important because of where it took place. The feeding of the 5,000 took place near Bethsaida, close to the Sea of Galilee. In contrast, the feeding of the 4,000 took place in the region of the Gerasenes, in the region around the Decapolis, in today's Lebanon. Okay, so the two miracles took place in different regions, so what? It is important because the first region was Jewish and the second region was Gentile. There are some numerical clues, signs in the text which also point to this distinction because numbers in the Bible are rarely accidental. So feeding of the 5,000 in this miracle, Jesus takes 5 loaves and feeds 5,000. Which is important of the 5 books of the Jewish law. Not only that, but when everyone had finished eating, 12 baskets of leftovers were collected, which was probably referring to the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 patriarchs, or even for the 12 disciples. The feeding of the 4,000 in this second miracle, 7 loaves are used and 7 baskets are collected. The number 7 is symbolic of completeness, not just Jews but Gentiles too, and the number 7 is remindful of the 7 days of creation when God created all humanity. So, what is the significance of the two feedings of the multitudes? Both miracles show the provision of the Lord, His love for all His people, both Jew and Gentile. In these miracles, He feeds them with miraculous bread in preparation for the day when they would be fed sacramentally by His very own body and blood in the Eucharist. We know that food is basic to life. When one is hungry, there is nothing more urgent than satisfying that hunger. That is why the gospel story of Jesus and the disciples feeding the 5,000 is so instructive. It began in a lonely place where Jesus had gone to grieve the death of his cousin, John the Baptist. He set aside his own grief, went out to the people, had compassion on them, and healed the sick. It would have been so much easier at the end of the day for Jesus to have followed the reasonable advice of his reasonable disciples. They wanted to send the crowds away before it got too late, so they could find shelter and some food in a nearby village. But Jesus didn't send the hungry away. He never does. Unconcerned by the magnitude of the need, 5,000 people and only 5 bread. He simply did the compassionate deed with whatever he had at hand. This was the miracle of compassion that his followers were invited to repeat. Take what is at hand, a little of this and a little of that, and give it away to God's hungry people, believing that God will do wonders with our offerings. Jesus took what was given, 5 loaves and 2 fish, and blessed it, offering it to God in gratitude. Then he proceeded to break what was given so that it could be multiplied. The first action was the taking of what was given. The second was blessing it, then breaking it, and finally giving what was broken, that all may have something. Nothing was left behind, and no one was left out. In the end, all were satisfied. How did that happen? Albert Einstein famously said, "The way I see it, you have 2 ways to live your life. The one as if no miracles exist, and the other as though everything is a miracle." To be open to the miraculous is to be open to impossible things becoming possible. It is attitude toward life that is fundamentally hopeful, one that places confidence in God always and is especially confident when all other sources have run out. I don't know how miracles occur, but the Gospel tells us that when the faithful act boldly, sharing our resources with others, miraculous things begin to happen. When people trust in God and act with compassion, shortage can and often is transformed into abundance. We might take this a step further and call this the Eucharistic life of taking what is given, the whole of our lives blessing it, the joys, frustration, and sorrows alike breaking it, allowing ourselves to be broken, open in compassion and sharing the pieces, offering our lives and our gifts to others. But there is more to the story. The human body can exist for only so long without food, yet we know that material abundance is not enough. There are other hungers that are as urgent. In each of us there is a hunger for connection, for meaning, for beauty, and for love. Therefore, St. Augustine believed that underneath all human hungers is a desire for God. Our hearts are restless until we find our rest in Thee, he prayed. The temptation is to satisfy ourselves with junk foods, quick fix, superficial relationships, endless entertainment that keep us going, even transform us, but cannot satisfy the deepest yearnings of our hearts for God. Nowhere is the generosity of God's love shown more clearly than at the Lord's table, where the hungry children of God are fed. There we relive Christ's actions when he took the bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to the disciples to share with the hungry. We are invited to do the same. In the Eucharist, we bring the very ordinary work of our hands, bread and wine, and join to this the offering of our very ordinary lives. To the invocation of the Spirit and the Word of God, this offering is transformed into the body and blood of Christ, the bread of life, and the cup of eternal salvation. We offer Him the work of our hands and our broken humanity, and He transforms these things into perfect humanity and life-giving divinity. And with this, He not only feeds us, but empowers us to feed the whole world. Lord, thank you that you are able to do a lot with a little, and that whatever we give to you, you multiply. Lord, today I give you my life, my time, and all I have.